Anthony, thank you for joining us. Anthony, you're the Director of the Catholic Parliamentary Office of the Bishops' Conference of Scotland. How long have you been in this post, and what does the job involve?
Well, I've been in this post for 9 years, since 2016, and I represent the Bishops' Conference of Scotland in the political realm. So I work in and around the UK and Scottish parliaments, and also with the UK and Scottish governments, on issues of particular interest to the Church, where the Church believes it can make a positive contribution to society. So, for example, on beginning and end-of-life issues, on issues around poverty, on education, and just various issues that are particularly of interest to the Church. My job, really, my role, is to take Church teaching and including Catholic social teaching into that political realm, and to share it in the hope that it will move parliamentarians to follow it, and to introduce just laws, for example, that are in accord with human dignity and in accord with the pursuit of the common good.
Yes. Assisted suicide. Now, that's been a prominent topic recently. How disappointed were you that the Scottish Parliament recently voted continue considering the assisted suicide bill?
I was very disappointed. Not entirely surprised. What I was surprised about was that the margin, 70 in favour and 56 against. So I wasn't surprised by that margin. I thought it would be a little tighter, but not entirely surprised that it passed stage one. Remember, this is only stage one, so it has got to go through 2 more stages before it's potentially passed into law. But what we have to remember, during the debate, the stage 1 debate on Liam MacArthur's bill, a lot of MSPs who spoke during the debate said that they would like to continue the conversation, that they would like to delve a little bit deeper into the issue, which to my mind suggests that they may still vote against at a later stage, and I think that's important to bear in mind. So, yeah, disappointed, but I think it's important to bear in mind that all is not lost, and it will only take 8 MSPs to turn against the bill in order to overturn that result, and I think that's certainly doable.
Now, does the bill's definition of quote-unquote terminal illness risk including those with non-terminal conditions?
Yes, so the definition of terminal illness under the MacArthur Bill is an advanced progressive illness, condition or disease that's essentially irreversible, and that is reasonably expected to bring about individual's death. There's no time limit on it, unlike the Kim Leadbeater's bill in Westminster, which has a 6-month time limit. So Liam MacArthur's bill is slightly broader in that sense. All you need to do is speak to any major disability group across the UK, and they will tell you that they are opposed to this bill. And that's because disabled people feel that they would be included within it. But it's not just disabled people. There are, we've heard stories from other jurisdictions around the world where assisted suicide is already legal, where people with anorexia, for example, have been included. I think there's at least 60 cases of people with anorexia who have opted for an assisted death. Take, for example, Jessica from Colorado, a 36-year-old, who was essentially starving herself, but she didn't have a terminal illness, no cancer, no organ failure, anything like that, and judges deemed that she was eligible for an assisted suicide because she was essentially starving herself to death. So it was deemed to be a terminal illness because it would eventually, of course, kill her. And it's stories like that really need to give MSPs and MPs real pause on this issue, because it's not as restrictive as they would like it to be, or many proponents suggest it is. It's very broad, and it will include people, for example, with diabetes, potentially people with dementia as well. So some experts have come out and said that they're worried about that. So it's very broad and extremely dangerous.
Yes.
Another issue around this legislation is domestic abuse. So I think 1 in 3 women in Scotland or across the UK have experienced some form of domestic abuse or coercion at the hands of an abusive partner, and so there's a real danger here that this law could play into the hands of an abuser in that situation. I think there's something like 61,000 reported incidences of domestic abuse in Scotland in 23-24, but that's significantly underreported. So domestic abuse is a significant issue as well, and there are campaign groups who have formed on the back of that to campaign against this legislation, because they're extremely worried that it will play into the hands of abusers and who will then coerce the women into opting for an assisted suicide.
Yes. So the result of this bill could be that women are disproportionately affected.
Without a doubt.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Yeah, most certainly, yeah. You've spoken about it, but continuing on from that, could vulnerable individuals feel pressured to choose assisted suicide?
Yes, I think that's absolutely the case. And as I mentioned, disability groups and people with eating disorders, and there's other groups as well. So people who struggle with mental ill health, who also could feel coerced into an early death. And it's not necessarily that they're coerced by other individuals, which could happen, but just coerced by the culture, this new culture where suicide is no longer, it's no longer accepted that suicide necessarily should be prevented, but actually it can be assisted by the state. And that's deeply, deeply troubling. And I think this is an important point that I'm not sure our parliamentarians have really thought deeply enough about. Whilst there are some stories of suffering for people at the end of life, and I think we have to take that on board, and we have to look at palliative care and how we can improve that. But the other side of that is that parliamentarians have a duty to vulnerable people, a duty to protect them. And this law puts vulnerable people very much firmly in its crosshairs. And so I think that's something that parliamentarians really need to think carefully about, is their duty to protect the vulnerable. It's not just necessarily about helping certain individuals to die who are suffering. It's because this law isn't just for those people. This law is for everyone. It's for everyone. And so it's going to include people who are extremely vulnerable, and they have a duty to protect them.
So from what you've said then, we would be actively undermining suicide prevention by legalising assisted dying?
I would say so. Yeah. I mean, I think that's a really obvious thing, that suicide prevention, because we are no longer saying that suicide necessarily is to be prevented in all cases. And there is a right to suicide prevention under human rights legislation. So and so we're going to compromise that, but it just changes the whole culture. Yes. And I find that terrifying. Is that we're no longer necessarily saying to people, come down off that bridge, come down off that cliff. We're actually, if I was the state, I would be giving them a shove.
Yes.
And this is what's, we kind of get into fundamental principles here, is should the state be in the business of helping people to kill themselves? And that's a giant leap. That is a crossing of the Rubicon. They're going to change healthcare forever. And it will be on their watch. And I think that's what parliamentarians really need to think deeply about.
Yes. I must confess, I got a bit irritated watching the Holyrood debate, particularly and the Westminster debate at second stage. This talk of the need to improve palliative care and how the assisted suicide conversation seems to appear and reappear every 10 years. And each time it has done, parliamentarians talk about the need to improve palliative care. But have we seen palliative care improved in the last 10 years in England and Wales since the Maris Bill? Have we seen that? And will we see it? Should assisted suicide in Westminster and Holyrood not succeed this time round, do you think we will see an improvement in overall palliative care?
Well, in Scotland, there is the Scottish Government has been consulting recently on a strategy to improve palliative care. But it's not the first time they've done this. So you're absolutely right. What you suggest is that they aren't doing enough to improve palliative care. As far as I'm aware, palliative care in the UK, where it is provided, is the best in the world. Right. It's the best bar none. But it is not widely enough available. There is inequality across different parts of the country in terms of the provision of palliative care. So we absolutely need to improve that. Liam MacArthur will argue that he can both improve palliative care and allow for assisted suicide. I'm not sure that would work. My concern would be that palliative care could end up being underfunded. The hospices could end up closing. For example, Catholic hospices aren't going to deliver assisted suicide, so are they going to be forced to close? We've seen with the Leadbeater Bill in Westminster that a very reasonable attempt to protect hospices that didn't want to be involved in assisted suicide, to give them an opt-out, a reasonable amendment was put forward to give them an institutional opt-out, was rejected. And so we're going to see a situation where hospices could potentially close. Also, if you think about hospices are funded essentially by donations, by voluntary donations, a lot of the public are opposed to assisted suicide. If hospices are starting to offer assisted suicide, if this law comes to pass, then many of those donors are no longer going to provide donations to hospices.
Yes. Yeah. Coming back to the issue of coercion, would you say that the proposed so-called safeguards are adequate to prevent possible coercion and abuse?
In a word, no. And I don't think you can ever legislate to detect coercion in 100% of cases, in all cases. I just don't think you can. I know there's other legislation which attempts to do it, but it's not fail-safe, and it can never be fail-safe. So I think that is going to be a real key issue for a lot of the MSPs who, even in principle, are in favour of assisted suicide. They'll need to think about this particular aspect of the legislation because, in truth, I don't think, even with the best available training, I don't think doctors and other health professionals can ever detect all instances of coercion in all cases. I think it's impossible.
Yes. And is it fair to say that, should coercion be detected in the case of assisted dying, that it could be that the damage has already been done? Should it be found that a family member was involved in influencing a loved one to kill themselves, that may be found after the fact, after they've killed themselves? Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And that's obviously a real danger. And I think you've touched on something there that, again, parliamentarians really need to think very, very deeply about. It's just one mistake like that. Yeah. One mistake will be one too many. It'll essentially be a death that should never have happened. And I think there's a significant risk that will be the case. It'll not just be one, but I think it'll be more than that. But one would be too many. And I don't think MSPs and MPs should be taking that risk.
Yes. Now, you've touched upon this, but if you could expand perhaps, will the bill actively devalue the lives of disabled people, do you think?
I think it will devalue all of our lives, but in particular vulnerable people like the disabled, the elderly, those who struggle with mental ill health, and we've talked about people with eating disorders and things like that. So, yes, I think it will. As I said at the outset, all major disability groups across the UK are opposed to this because they think it will devalue their lives and because they think that they will be at risk of feeling pressured to end their lives prematurely. And we see the stats from Oregon in the US, where consistently around 50% of people who opt for an assisted suicide in Oregon cite that feeling a burden, whether it's to family, caregivers, or the state, feeling a burden was one reason why they opted for an assisted death.
And we saw, I believe it was an individual from Canada during the Ledbetter Bill committee stage, we saw one of them say that feeling a burden could be a legitimate reason to kill themselves. So that maybe that argument won't even work with some of our detractors if feeling a burden is somehow okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's true. Yeah, you're right. And in fact, an amendment was put forward for the Leadbeater Bill to protect people from feeling a burden and being a reason for opting for an assisted suicide. So yeah, absolutely. They're even rejecting very reasonable suggested amendments like that. Other ones that they've rejected, for example, include a requirement to see a palliative care specialist. And, absurdly, another amendment that was rejected was a law to prevent people from encouraging other people to take up the option of an assisted suicide. So you could encourage someone to opt for an assisted suicide, and that wouldn't be illegal. And I just find that utterly bizarre and absurd, and quite frankly terrifying.
Yeah. Now, Anthony, in what ways do you think that this bill, or both bills, Westminster and Holyrood, could impact the doctor-patient relationship going forward?
Massively. I don't think there's any getting away from that. I think it will change how all of us view our doctors. When you make a GP appointment, are you going into an appointment with a GP who's in favour of this? And especially if you're seriously ill, when you see a doctor, are you seeing a doctor that's prepared to hand you a lethal cocktail of drugs in order for you to kill yourself? So it's completely going to alter healthcare. Not just the doctor-patient relationship, but as I say, institutionally as well, with hospices, and of course the NHS. The NHS, and all health professionals have to now held firm to the Hippocratic Oath to first do no harm. But that would be gone. You could just take a pen and just draw a line straight through that, because all of a sudden, actually, healthcare in this country is actually doing harm.
Yes. Yeah.
Doing harm to people, and so that's extremely worrying. And the danger then is that the NHS becomes a national suicide service for some.
Yes.
And I find that abhorrent.
Yeah. Now, do you think that economic factors will influence decisions toward assisted dying?
Yeah, I think it will. I don't think there's any getting away from that. Campaigners in favour will suggest that that's not the case, but there are undoubtedly savings to be made. And in fact, Liam MacArthur, in one of the documents accompanying his bill, admitted that there was savings being made in Canada. So yes, it would be a lot cheaper to provide someone with a lethal cocktail of 100 pills that they just mash up and swallow, than giving them palliative care over a period of time. So yes. Absolutely.
And what really gets me about the Canadian situation is that, for example, in 2023, it was over 15,000 people chose to end their lives through assisted dying or assisted suicide. And that's in a country with a population of about 39 million. In the UK, we're getting close to 70 million. So in 10 years' time, we could literally see over 15,000 people a year choosing to end their lives through this.
That's right, in Canada, and the law only came into force in Canada in 2016. I think there was around just over 1,000 in the first year. But you're right, 2023 is now over 15,000 people, and it's almost 5% of all deaths in Canada now are by assisted suicide or euthanasia, because euthanasia is available in Canada, and most of the assisted deaths are actually by euthanasia in Canada. But I think in one state, and I can't quite recall, I think it might be British Columbia, but one of the states in Canada, is 8% of all deaths are by assisted suicide or euthanasia. So it's truly frightening.
Yes. Now, SBUC covered this recently, but the Law Society of Scotland coming out and saying that they're not actually sure that Holyrood retains the power to enact a law like this. Can you touch upon that?
Yes, you're right. So, being a devolved legislature, the Scottish Parliament is still ultimately beholden to the UK Parliament, which is sovereign. But the certain issues are devolved, certain issues are reserved to the UK Parliament. And within Liam MacArthur's bill, there's certain aspects that are absolutely reserved to the UK Parliament, including conscientious objection and also approved substances, so the substances that would be used in an assisted suicide. And so that's for the UK Parliament to approve. It's not for the Scottish Parliament to approve. And so there is going to be tension there. And in fact, some experts came out a couple of months ago to suggest that maybe, in effect, probably the whole bill is incompetent as far as the Scottish Parliament is concerned, and so it wouldn't be able to pass it. So there's going to be quite a fair amount of cross-border shenanigans, and issues to resolve that's going to make the passage of this bill quite difficult. And I think that's something that MSPs, particularly those in the SNP and Green ranks, who are obviously in favour of an independent Scotland, they should give them pause, this idea that Westminster still holds control over this legislation, and there's going to be this tension. There is also the danger, of course, that one parliament in the UK votes in favour of this and another doesn't, and so we're going to have, assisted suicide tourism.
Yes.
So it's very, very troubling.
Yes. Now, finally, something that SBUC gets our supporters to do a lot is to contact their political representatives, MPs, MSPs, Assembly members. What's the rationale behind this? And do you think that it actually has an effect? Do you think that our political representatives listen, take on board what we're saying?
I think they do. I think they do. There is a danger with the kind of modern way of engaging with parliamentarians, so by email or by online tools, which can be very useful. But I think there is a danger that sometimes parliamentarians and governments will just kind of dismiss them as being a kind of organised effort. Now, I think that's wrong, but there is a danger that they feel that is the case, and so they batch it almost as one response rather than 5,000-6,000. So there is that, but I still think there is value, especially on these conscience issues. Like assisted suicide, like abortion, for example. In those conscience issues, I think it is important that as many people as possible engage with their parliamentarians, and whether that's by email or writing by hand, whatever. One thing that I would recommend people do is to try and attend surgeries, because MPs and MSPs still hold surgeries in their constituencies. And I was talking to an MSP yesterday, and he said that very few people come to the surgeries now. So there is space there. There is a space for people to go and be heard on these issues, and to look their parliamentarian in the eye, and speak to them about these issues. So I think that's important. And I wouldn't, I think also, local community groups have got a part to play here. Local church groups have got a part to play in inviting parliamentarians to come into their environment, to speak to them about the issues that are important to them. And of course, we're coming up to a Scottish Parliament election in May next year. And so this kind of engagement will become even more important. So yes, I think there are various ways to engage with parliamentarians. You can use email, you can use online tools, it's fine. I don't think it's as effective as meeting them in person. So if you could meet them in person, I think that would be better.
Yes. And would you say happy in between is letter writing?
Letter writing.
The old-fashioned art.
Do you know, old-fashioned letter writing, they won't get many of them.
No.
It's just, it's something that is kind of, it doesn't happen so much anymore. So if you write a letter, handwritten, to a parliamentarian, they'll take notice of that.
Yes.
And it will it will get noticed and it will get read, I'm sure, because they get so few of them.
Yes. Anthony, thank you for coming in and for all the work that you do with the Bishops' Conference of Scotland. Thank you very much.